really, really happy to have a Bitcoin day. Been working on this for a while, and it's just really great to have a whole day dedicated to it. And wanted to kick it off with a kind of a Bitcoin mining overview panel. We wanted to kind of dissect what Bitcoin mining is for some that might not be familiar with it. And we got two great minds here to do that. So I'll start with having you guys introduce yourself and give us a little background.
Who did you want to go first?
You go first, Curtis.
Hey, my name is Curtis Harris. I'm with Compass Mining. I'm our Senior Director of Growth. It is really my privilege to be here. I live in Lawrence, Kansas. I have the privilege of traveling and representing our company, nationally. Wyoming is out in front. You guys have built something special from Caitlin and Steven and the university. I'm incredibly happy to be here. Thank you.
My name is Adam Mortoff. I echo that. I'm really happy to be here. I love Wyoming. I messaged Matt, hopefully that he would have a spot for me, and he was enthusiastic about having me back this year. So really happy to be here. I'm the founder of Stranded Energy Investments. I started a company that invested in mining Bitcoin off of waste natural gas back in 2018. Since then, I've worked with Upstream Data for the last 6 years. Met Curtis in Kansas, in 2021? So 4 years ago. I know a lot of the faces in this room, so happy to be here. Please, one thing I want to throw out there is there's no bad questions. So if at the end, if you guys want to ask any questions or want to get any other information out of us, please don't hesitate to. I think Curtis is really kind and accepting of simple questions, and I'm sure he'll do a great job answering most of them. So
there's so many layers to that. We should go ahead and set a ground rule that in complex conversations, you sometimes need simple explanations and detailed explanations. And I think that depending on the questions, Matt asked, I think you're going to get both. Adam understands Bitcoin mining at a complexity level greater than most that I've ever met. So you got good people right here. What's up?
All right. Well, we'll start with it's not a simple question, but we'll see how simple we can get it. What is Bitcoin mining, and why is it so important to the network? What happened?
Bitcoin mining is it's this relatively simple solution to a basic commodity problem, which is how do you produce something fairly? How is it that you can have a digital commodity, something that is native to digital space, but have fair and open production with low barriers to entry? Bitcoin mining solves that by leveraging a proof of work system. At the end of the day, in order to produce Bitcoin, in order to bring Bitcoin into existence, earn it for yourself, which is directly tied to its supply schedule, you have to contribute some amount of physical work as a capacity. And that's measured either in kilowatt hours, British thermal units, units of work. And so the way Bitcoin achieves this is by going down to the simplest execution or simplest task a computer can do, which is changing a 0 to a 1 or a 1 to a 0. It's called a hash. And so by generating hashes or by executing hashes, anyone who wants to participate generally just has to have hardware to do so and energy to expend. At the end of the day, what is Bitcoin mining? It's just jamming electricity into computers. The reason it's important is because it's the only way in which we can deduce that nobody has an unfair advantage over anyone else. They may have some advantages, whether it's an efficiency or energy source, but they're not unfair advantages. Nobody's special. And the way that we can be certain that nobody is special is by using a unit of measurement that nobody can cheat, like a kilowatt hour, right? Nobody can cheat electricity. Nobody has some magic power to generate it at no cost, distribute it at no cost, and ultimately consume it and dedicate it at no cost. So at the end of the day, I'd say that Bitcoin mining in its simplicity is the simplest form of competition humans have come up with.
That was powerful. So I think there is value in having a simpler explanation. So I'll take a swing at the bat at that. it's easy to pull back to what is Bitcoin. So, understanding how people arrive at Bitcoin, I think that that Rorschach thing, like people are going to see Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining through their own lens. But if you've got a base level understanding of what Bitcoin is, Bitcoin mining is a horrible name. Like no one in our industry is, oh, we're so excited. We're glad we named it mining. It really steals. But Bitcoin is peer-to-peer transactions, and those transactions, just like your Visa card or your, ATM, are settled. Those transactions are settled. The Bitcoin network settles all of those transactions, and Bitcoin mining is the process that does that. It adds a second element that it also provides a security layer. So just as you think as Amazon and AWS, they've got, intense security protocols to keep your data or their data from being hacked. Their network has an intense security protocol. The Bitcoin network also has an intense security protocol, and that is the process of Bitcoin mining. It provides the security to the Bitcoin network. So it processes transactions and provides security to the network.
I want to just chime in on that too. It makes our job really hard from an educational standpoint. There's a lot of bad terminology in Bitcoin, whether it's wallets, Bitcoin mining, ASICs is a bad term. It's what we all use.
Maxi.
Yeah. But so I think some of the nuance of the definitions is important. I think Bitcoin mining is a bad, name as well. I think maybe calling it hashing would have been preferred, or even processing. But I just wanted to highlight that point that as we go on, even things like especially wallets, right? A lot of the terminology can get a little bit confusing. So again, we'll iron some of that out. But if you have questions, please feel free to shout.
Yeah, just that. So, that Rorschach thing, right? Start raising your hands, put some pressure on Matt to take some questions from the audience because there's going to be nuanced perspectives. So you've already got a couple over there, Matt.
Yeah, that's objectively fact. In terms of how to put it into some kind of a scale, just 5 years ago we were under 80 exahash. So the network has the amount of people mining Bitcoin or the amount of computational work being dedicated to the network has more than 10x in the last 5 years. In terms of just to give a relative idea, with an average efficiency of around 25 watt per terahash or 25 megawatt per exahash, we're talking about 25 gigawatts of continuous power toward the network. So that's about, 10, 15 million single family homes worth of power at any given time. So, consider, there's probably less than 100,000 single family homes in Wyoming. So we're talking about, 150 Wyoming's worth of electricity.
You're hearing the word hash there. Do we have a base level understanding what hash is? Adam mentioned it earlier that the Bitcoin mining, the computers, they do this really simple thing, turning a 0 to a 1. They're performing this function, which is called a hash. And the question framed it from zettahash. So when I entered Bitcoin, we were counting in petahash, and then we got it to terahash, and now we're counting in zettahash. So, Adam, for the audience's perspective, like a terahash, how many of those single guesses is it? Do you know that number?
Terahash is what, 100 million, I think, or 100 billion?
Yeah, 100 billion guesses is one.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe a trillion for terahash. It's the metrics version, metric system version of gigantic numbers.
I'll take the second one and then see if Adam can take a swing at the first one. So the question is, you're making this guess. You're trying to win a Bitcoin block, and so you're going to devote all of this electricity at it, but what are the odds that you're actually going to achieve that? So if you're doing that, if you're acting as an individual, those odds are incredibly low that you're going to have enough machinery that you're going to be able to point your Bitcoin miners and you're going to win a block. So what most Bitcoin miners do is they pool their resources together and they join a pool where they all point their Bitcoin mining hashing at that same pool. And then that pool has a much higher likelihood of winning a block. And so just to give a simplistic answer, if you've got a 100 machines on in a day, you are going to win. If you're participating in a pool, you're going to have Bitcoin mining proceeds on a regular given basis. If you're mining through a pool, it's typically fairly predictable revenue payout.
Yeah. So to answer your question in terms of like how many kilowatt hours, probably better to talk about megawatt hours for a Bitcoin be mined. I mean, the simple asterisk there is what computers are you using? I mean, using my laptop, you're going to need probably gigawatt hours. Using later gen ASICs, right now, I think we're around, if I can just run some numbers, like 750 megawatt hours. So if you for anybody here that understands power costs, if you have 10 cent per kilowatt hour electricity, that's $100 per megawatt hour. And if you needed 650 megawatt hours to mine a Bitcoin, well, 650 times 100 is 65,000. So by that notion, you'd be spending $65,000 in power to mine a Bitcoin, which is worth 115 grand today. So you'd have some profitability there, right? The better your computer, the more you can do with a single kilowatt hour. So the less kilowatt hours or megawatt hours you need to mine a Bitcoin, but it's in the neighborhood of 600 to 1,000. So 600 to 1,000, 600 megawatt hours to 1,000 megawatt hours is about the answer.
All right, well, beyond just providing the base layer security for this unprecedented decentralized network, I kind of wanted to get your guys' perspective on kind of the second and third order effects of Bitcoin mining when it comes to things like balancing on grids, and particularly in Adam's case, like stranded energy resources and things like that. So you guys give us kind of an idea about how you think about Bitcoin mining and its second and third order effects.
So excited that this morning we announced a 3.3 megawatt project outside of Gillette. I'm from Kansas. I think it's near Gillette. Like it's geographically.
You're talking about Compass Analysis? Awesome.
That's right.
If it's within a couple hours.
That's right. A partnership with 360 Energy, who is an innovator in oil and gas to Bitcoin mining, an oil and gas producer in your great state. There's pipeline. This is pipeline quality gas, but the pipeline is constrained. And so they got to get the gas out of the way so that they can get to the oil, right? Does that make sense? So 3.3 megawatts, about 1,000 machines, 5 megawatt genset, 3 containers, moving that gas out of the way so that oil producer in your state can produce more oil. That is amazing. That's never existed before, that you can move computers to the pad site so that oil producer can get more oil out of the ground.
Yeah, I could spend a couple hours talking about the second order effects. This is, in my opinion, this is what led me to be here today, is the simple and yet earth-shattering reality that Bitcoin provides to this world. I mean, the real innovative aspect of Bitcoin, in my opinion, and it's much more disruptive and innovative in an energy sense and an energy vertical than it is in the financial or monetary sense, is since the advent of Bitcoin, no longer are energy producers and consumers constrained by geographical obstacles. It's not often that, especially here, like in the first world in the United States, that we talk about how energy is consumed. Usually when I ask people where power comes from, they point at the outlet on the wall, right? But if you think about it just simplistically, energy is consumed very cyclically and very unpredictably. There's some predictability in there, but from the cyclical nature of it, But if you guys just think about your day to day, right? Like on weekdays, people leave their homes, they go to work. So now we have these office buildings that are maybe running air conditioners or heaters. And a lot of the efficiencies of energy consumption actually increase when people are all together in the same buildings. But then everybody gets home at about the same time. They kick on their washer and dryer, they kick on their stove, and we all consume power. It gets cold when the sun sets, and we all get cold at the same time, and we all flick on the heater at the same time. And so these power companies have to deal with these large spikes, right? What they call their trough and their peak. These large spikes and these large decreases in electrical load. And so the way we consume energy is inherently a problem for the utility. If you were going to start a utility company, you wanted to be an electricity provider, and you had the question of, hey, how much electricity should we produce? It's a difficult question to answer because you need to have enough electricity so that when everyone gets home and turns on their heaters, turns on their air conditioners, that you have enough capacity for them in an economic sense, right? You're not going to just run their rates to something they can't afford. But do you really want to build this massive amount of generation if the majority of the time people aren't consuming that power, right? It might just be from like 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. that you're sitting there and a ton of power is getting consumed, and then the rest of the day you're just idle. So due to this natural unpredictability of energy consumption, Bitcoin comes in and just kind of harmonizes all aspects of it. Anytime that there's energy that cannot be consumed, whether it's due to economic constraints, like stranded gas. A lot of people think stranded gas is due to some, force of nature, or and sometimes it is a geographical constraint, but most of the time it's just pure economics. It's like, hey, in order to build a pipeline, I have to spend $10 million. And if I build this pipeline, I spend $10 million, I have enough gas that I'll make $80 a day. Like no one's going to invest $10 million to make $80 a day. So they just burn the gas. It's just pure it's economically stranded more than anything. Bitcoin comes in and it's an omnipresent autonomous energy consumption market. It's for the first time in humanity's history, you can sell power without a buyer, which is really strange. I mean, the Bitcoin network isn't buying your energy. It isn't buying your power. It was programmed 16, 17 years ago to reward you for your power today. The rate that you get rewarded is non-negotiable. It's an open market rate, but it's non-zero as well. So when your option is either zero or non-zero, your basic economic incentives are to go with the latter. So from the second and third order effects are huge. Like one thing I can give you some insight into right now is natural gas power generation infrastructure, like natural gas engines, are really hard to come by. Like we can't build them fast enough. We have way more gas and even more capital than we do raw materials. So, trying to get an engine, if you wanted an engine right now, unless you found one on the shelf that maybe is used, you're probably talking about at least like a 10-week just to get the engine built. And that's a downstream effect of the ability now to take any hydrocarbon or, rushing river and monetize natural resources free of geographical constraints, which I just can't stress enough the disruption to the energy industry from that regard. It's profound.
You're pretty knowledgeable on the second order effects as well. Like when you thought of that question, like what was on your mind?
Well, lots of what Adam was saying. I really do think Bitcoin mining and the application of Bitcoin here really is, if not more, it either is as or more disruptive than it even is in the financial sector. I think it's really going to change the way we interact with these energy systems, the way we can monetize new build outs, things like that. And that particularly hits home here in Wyoming, being an energy state and really driving the lifeblood of what we do.
You've got a great agenda. I noticed several of the heat repurposing topics or conversations. There's so many more layers there. I mentioned living in Kansas. I run old generation Bitcoin miners in my garage to heat my home during the winter. It costs me more, but I'm getting this non-KYC Bitcoin and I'm getting heat. And boy, do I smile ear to ear when I do that. So second order effects.
Absolutely. And then kind of to close this out, I want to think about the industry as it's really blown up. The hash rate connected to the network is massive, bigger than it's ever been. We've seen the emergence of publicly traded miners, but we're also seeing an explosion of open source mining and other applications like that. So maybe I want to get you guys kind of opinion on where the industry is going and maybe some of the things that are exciting you
Well, you're closing this out. We got 10 minutes left. So, where the industry's going, I don't think this is incredibly nuanced, but I think that you mentioned the big players, the publicly traded companies. I think we're going to continue to see consolidation, which means some of those companies are going to fail and others are going to buy them, or they're going to merge, or they're just going to, some will go out of business. I think that the large mega miner is going to continue to see consolidation. And I think that the AI, ML, HPC compute demand is going to, begin to be more competition for Bitcoin than we expect. They can pay more for electrons. So I think Bitcoin miners are going to end up being more scrappy and deploying off grid at 3 megawatt sites instead of on grid at 400 megawatt sites. And, I'll pass the mic to Adam for his perspective. But that one site that I mentioned to you this morning, this is a fairly new program for us where we're doing these JVs on oil and gas sites. We're a large hosting company with thousands of customers and running lots of machines, and we've figured out lots of things. These small sites are actually some of our most profitable. It's just amazing that because of the economics. So, where the market was going, or where the industry was going, and what were we excited about? I'll say what were we excited about for let Adam have some mic time.
Yeah, Curtis is absolutely right. Especially with HPC and AI, like a lot of these AI companies, they're burning just ungodly amounts of money with minimal return. I think something, the stat I read the other day was, 94% of people are using AI. I think only 3% of people are paying for it. So these guys are burning, billions of dollars a week on power to train their AI models, and they're not really getting a return right now. They're chasing this, general intelligence kind of dream, which I think is a little bit of a pipe dream. I think it's a little bit of a bubble. But the bottom line is they're going to crowd out Bitcoin miners on the grid. Bitcoin miners on the grid are in trouble. The bigger they are, the more trouble they're in. I always tell people, I always get guys that come up to me after I talk and they're like, hey, what mining stock should I buy? And I usually say, don't. Like, just go buy Bitcoin, right? And the reason is because Bitcoin as a commodity has a perfectly inelastic supply. So unlike any other commodity, its marginal supply does not change with market dynamics. And what I mean by that is like, so if today, if the price of salt went to like $100,000 a pound, how would that change your daily behavior? Because it would change mine. I would be boiling seawater. At $100,000 a pound, I'd rent a pickup truck, I'd haul water to my house and boil it. Everybody would do that. And everybody doing that would increase the marginal supply of salt, which would push the price down, right? Because everyone's producing it now. So now it's not $100,000 a pound, it's dropped down to 10. With Bitcoin, this function does not exist. Bitcoin could be $1 million a coin tomorrow. No more is getting produced, right? It's predetermined. So because of that, scale is punished. The more exahash you have, the less advantageous of a position you're in. So this is the only commodity game where scale is punished. And that's a good thing. That's a feature, not a bug. That'll keep Bitcoin decentralized. It'll mean that the majority of mining, or at least a large portion of mining, will come from, what I would call like small to medium sized operators. But that sheer fact that marginal supply can't increase means that for every exahash you bring online, you're diluting yourself, right? You're drinking your own milkshake. So the first exahash you bring online is worth, $50,000 a day. The second exahash might be 49,500. And then the third is 49,250. So for every exahash you bring on, the cost to bring that on is the same, but the benefit is diminished, right? Just marginally diminishing returns. And that's just a basic economic fact that means these large mega miners will consolidate, like Curtis said, but they will fail. They will not compete with the, mom and pop oil and gas company that has some waste gas, and maybe they only have enough waste gas to run 110 computers. But if there's, 2,500 of those people, we're talking about, a serious amount of competition that is not going to get shaken away by price or shaken away by market conditions. And so ultimately the sensitivity nature of like how ruthless Bitcoin mining is from a competition standpoint, it's going to be bloody out there. Right. And I just would encourage everybody to celebrate that. Like I celebrate when companies fail and they have to move on, not because I'm happy at their lack of success, but because I'm seeing the market give signals to the rest of us that that's a bad idea, right? Too often in this world, especially in this fiat world, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac can just act irresponsibly and overload, lend to borrowers that should have never borrowed, and everybody can be upside down, and then just they come in and create money and just bail everybody out. And that bad behavior is not disincentivized. So at the same time that I like to see good behavior be incentivized, I like to see bad behavior be disincentivized. And so, never should we change the Bitcoin reward system to keep miners profitable when they aren't. If it's that old saying, if you die, you die. Like, this is a ruthless game, and you should only compete if you can. I think a lot of people are competing in Bitcoin mining that shouldn't be. I think and time will be against them.
I want to come back to what are we excited about, because I care. I'm excited about my family's future. We found Bitcoin, like low time preference. If we just wait long enough, there's exciting times ahead. I hope that you are all on a discovery of finding Bitcoin for your family's personal financial future. Mining for me produces the lowest marginal cost to acquire Bitcoin. My background was construction, hard asset infrastructure. I gravitated to mining. As you're walking through the streets here at University of Wyoming, do not overlook that you guys are so innovative and that you have every opportunity to build for yourself, whether it's for your family, for your state, for your university. So I'm excited about the Bitcoin community. I'm thankful for what Caitlin does. Speaking of like looking around, if you guys aren't aware that out there in the rest of the world, that Caitlin Long is a massive innovator, and she's right here, speaking to your group regularly. So I'm excited about the future of Bitcoin and the future of Bitcoin community.
Yeah, I think I'm most excited for how Bitcoin is kind of a carrot to learn about energy consumption. I think Bitcoin incentivizes humanity to overproduce energy. It actually rewards the overproduction of energy. And so I think a world where humanity is producing and, more importantly, consuming more energy on a per capita basis is a world that is ever increasing the uplift of human flourishing. And so, I think about today versus 100 years ago. The amount of power that I consume in a day is comparable to, somebody in the early 1900s, probably what they consume in a year. So, I'm living a life. If it was 100 years ago, it would be as though I have like 400 or 500 servants, right? Is kind of the leverage of technology. And that's purely based on an economic energy consumption basis. And so the more supply of energy that we have, the more humanity will flourish, and Bitcoin is a carrot to get us there.
I'm here all day. I really enjoy engaging about Bitcoin mining. I'm incredibly approachable. So if there's a lunch or break and you guys want to say hi, I'd enjoy meeting you. So are we at the end of our time, Matt?
Yeah, we're just about there. But I would definitely encourage, these are two great minds to come pick and learn about Bitcoin mining and go real deep. But yeah, I think this Bitcoin is disruptive in general, but particularly on the energy side, I think it's going to be a real game changer in the way we look at energy, how we interact with energy, particularly here in the West. But, there's all sorts of cool projects happening all around the world. And in a lot of ways, I view Bitcoin mining as kind of like the apex predator of energy. It's going out and seeking stranded energy sources. It's monetizing new grids. A lot of that's happening in Africa and other places. But I think right here in Wyoming, we can stand to really benefit from growing this industry here.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.